Good morning and welcome to Hometown Heroes podcast. This is your co-host without a co-host today. This is Rick Irving, and I'm doing a little Facebook stuff here, trying to get this over to the Hometown Heroes channel. But I wanted to just tell you that Mary Staffel, my co-host, she had a death in the family, and she's gone to take care of the funeral part and everything. It was her aunt that passed away. So Mary's been a very, very busy woman. We had Don Graves' 100th birthday Saturday, and she, along with other people from the Airpower Foundation, worked on that birthday party, and it was just a great time. Don's just magnificent guy, and he's doing good. If you just bear with me just a second so I can get this over on Hometown Heroes. So I'm kind of discombobulated today, but anyway, he had the birthday party at Hearsay in Arlington, and the 100th birthday. Okay, I've got that shared. So here he is. The Rangers came across the street. Hearsay is a restaurant and bar that is in the old stadium across from the new stadium where the Texas Rangers play. One of the representatives came and gave him a special jersey because Don sings the national anthem several times a year with the Rangers. And then Black Rifle Coffee Company, they sent some representatives up. A lot of these fellows with Black Rifle had gone with Don to and Tracy Hunter with Beyond the Call, had gone with him on several trips to Pearl Harbor. And anyway, they developed their own blend of coffee for Don, and it's called the Black Dragon. And then on the back of the can, it's got a quote by Don. So what a magnificent day Saturday was. And then Sunday, Don Graves sang the national anthem at Texas Motor Speedway at the NASCAR race, which is a big deal. He sings there sometime, but usually it's during the day, and he sings God Bless America. So I saw it on the national news, and Don I think today he went to Memphis or Nashville with some of the folks from the Airpower Foundation and Fort Worth Airpower Council. Last year, the Airpower Foundation and the Fort Worth Airpower Council had a benefit, and it was Panther Music Night, and we had some songwriters come from Nashville. They got with Don and heard his story, and they wrote a song. And I think they're going to record the song in Nashville with Don there, and they had his itinerary. He has all kinds of interviews and just, he's a busy guy. So for 100 years old, he gets around great. I just want to remind everybody that this Thursday night at the American Legion 655, and it's on Carson Street in Haltom City, we're having war stories. And it's the theme this year is Vietnam. So we'll have 4 Vietnam veterans who will tell some stories. We'll have dinner, spaghetti dinner, and it's only $20. And the Fort Worth Airpower Council and Hometown Heroes, Freedom Mobility, Smiles for Vets have all kind of come together and kind of helped sponsor this. Matt and Jean Tuggy have underwritten it, and they have Smiles for Vets, which is a nonprofit that does dental work for veterans. So it's going to be a great time. Just hit the QR code there. I mean, that's a cheap date, $20 to go hear 4 veterans. We have Bill Pugh, an Army veteran. He was in the Central Highlands, went into Cambodia, and actually some of the people he was with got executed by the North Vietnamese. And then we have Bill Henry. Bill Henry, first Cav, and Bill Pugh's been on the podcast 3 times. Bill Henry's been on a couple of times. Bill Henry's got some great stories to tell about his time in combat. And probably you might hear some of the background noise. It may sound like artillery, but it's just thunder. We're having a kind of a rainy morning in Fort Worth, Texas. Bruce Stacy, Lieutenant Colonel retired Bruce Stacy, infantry officer on the ground. We've had him on 2 podcasts, and he is the chairman of the Fort Worth Airpower Council. He's got some great stories, 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, and 2 Purple Hearts. And then we have John Ewell, Lieutenant Colonel, retired from the Air Force. He was a B-52 pilot, and he got shot down on a mission, I think an operational linebacker. And one thing about whenever they got shot down, his entire crew survived, which is a rarity for those B-52s, I'm told. John, it was near the end of the war. John was held as a prisoner of war in the Hanoi Hilton for about 98 days. So I think that one thing that intrigues me, and it's a question I'm going to ask, I'm going to be the moderator at War Stories, but it's a question I'm going to ask John. You know, here he comes, he's a new guy, and, you know, they kind of have him separated and in seclusion and stuff, but they have that TAP code. If you don't know about the TAP code that the prisoners of war used in Vietnam, you need to learn about that. But here's a new guy, comes into the prison, and these other guys, some of them been there 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, but they don't get any news. So here's a guy, he was held captive 98 days. So he knows everything that's been going on, you know, and so I'm sure that those other guys were anxious to hear some updates on what was happening in the world. But anyway, that's Thursday night War Stories at the American Legion Hall in Haltom City. If you have any questions or anything about that, just give me a holler. You can find me here on Facebook. There's my friend Terry Burgess, Gold Star dad and co-founder of the Gold Star Parents Retreat, saying good morning, Rick. Good morning, Terry. Love you, brother. So just try to make it to War Stories. I wanted to kind of share with you, because I haven't really told my story probably in a long time, about how this old Army veteran got involved with all these nonprofits. Here's another Cameron McNutt telling me good morning. Good morning, Cameron. Cameron does a lot of stuff for a lot of different, she's a media person for the Airpower Foundation, and she's our executive assistant, I think is what we call it, with the Fort Worth Airpower Council. She does work for Holidays and Heroes, and she stays on top of things. So Cameron, thank you for all you do. And then Ann Colt saying good morning as well. See you Thursday night. Ann Colt is with Freedom Mobility Foundation, and she and her husband, Major General Kevin Pottinger. One time I called him Lieutenant General, and he said, "I'm not a Lieutenant General." He said, "I'm just a Major General." But I tried to promote him, and he said, "Lieutenant Generals, they have a lot more work to do than the Major Generals." But anyway, good morning, Ann. Ann's a great person, and Ann does a magnificent job. She was executive administrator, executive assistant for the Fort Worth Airpower Council for several years, and did a great job. And then Cameron took her place. Our friend Thomas Holder, good morning. Thomas is a historian. He does a lot of stuff with vets. He works with vets that are on hospice. So good morning, Thomas. And then Chris Williamson, good morning, Chris. Chris is like a powerhouse when it comes to doing stuff for military and veterans. every time I go someplace, it seems like Chris is there. She's very active at NASJRB. So that's part of my tribe. And first off, I want to just give a big shout out because I was looking at how many episodes we've done on our Hometown Heroes. And our Hometown Heroes, this is the 139th episode. The thunder's coming in. I wish I could kind of extinguish that. But anyway, Hometown Heroes, 139 episodes. Here's two people, me and Mary Staffel, my co-host. Everybody knows Mary. She's a prisoner of roll call, and she's retired from the Air Force. So I have a friend. His name is Larry O'Neill. Thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people know Larry. He has Fort Worth Memory Facebook group. It's got about 125,000 active members. He has a Fort Worth Memory Museum and classic car detail. And Larry and I have been friends for years. We get together and talk. He's a Fort Worth boy too. And we talk about the good old days. Well, I'd go down and talk to him at the museum, and we worked on boxing in Cowtown, where it's kind of a reunion every year of all the old boxers from Fort Worth. Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we had some magnificent boxers, and had several who were world champion boxers, and a couple of them in several weight divisions were the world champions, like Donald Curry and Paulie Allah. But anyway, we have this reunion every year with them. So Larry and I did a lot of work with that. And I'd tell him about roll call and all the veterans. He said, Rick, why don't we start talking to these guys? Because Larry, he just does Facebook Live all the time. And he interviews everybody. Everybody goes down there. All the politicians go down there before election to I always say, to kiss his ring, but to interview with Larry, because he's got such a blowtorch when it comes to getting the news out about Fort Worth and things that are going on. So anyway, Larry said, let's start interviewing some of these vets, and let's just do a show. And I said, well, okay. I said, I've got a friend that she's a president of roll call, Mary Staffel. I'd like for her to be involved, because if we're going to interview vets, roll call's got a ton of it. So every month, roll call, the monthly veterans luncheon, they have it's coming in. But roll call has about 500 veterans that show up every month for a free lunch. And so in our database, we have probably 1,700, 2,000 veterans. So I said, we've got a built-in source of veterans. So Mary and I went down there, and the first podcast, Mary and I talked, and then I think maybe the next podcast, we got our friend Doug Peterson, dust-off helicopter pilot, very involved with roll call, and it sounded like incoming artillery, doesn't it? But anyway, we kicked that off. We were just doing Facebook Live. Larry was so gracious to let us use the Fort Worth Memories Museum. And I started getting more equipment. We have got the microphones and lights and cameras and everything. We had 3 cameras going and 5 or 6 microphones. And my son Dusty and my other son Tyler, they were kind of the background media guys, and they'd come and set it up. Take about an hour to set up and tear it down, and an hour broadcast. But Larry was just extremely helpful in getting us to the point where we could launch off and get on the internet like this, like we have our show now. But Larry, for 38 years, he's had a bike drive in Fort Worth, and he's given away over 18,000 bikes in the 34 years. But he started a nonprofit. It's called Larry's Bike Drive, or Larry's Bike Drive. It's called Larry's Kids, and he starts. He does it all year, but he starts collecting bikes, new bikes, the helmets and other toys. And so he spends all this time getting the bikes together. He's got a wonderful team on his board, and they help him get the word out. This year, I think they gave away 700 or 800 bikes. They do it down Farrington Field. No application, no anything. You just come up there, get in line, and get a bicycle. So visit larryskids.com and learn more about Larry and what he does for our community. But that's how we got started. I just want to give a shout out to Larry for that. I got involved back, about 12, 13 years ago with an organization called Heroes on the Water. And Heroes on the Water takes veterans and their families kayak fishing, and they provide everything. They provide the kayaks, all the fishing tackle. They get a exemption from the state of Texas, so you don't have to have a have a license if you're fishing with us. And they go some pretty cool places. But I got involved with them. I helped charter a chapter of Heroes on the Water down at Fort Hood, which is now Fort Cavasso. Had a great group of guys, and that is going strong. And then I helped do another chapter up here, the Brazos Valley chapter, and that's a great chapter. They fish a lot at some private areas, and sometimes we go to the Brazos River. But that's kind of how I got indoctrinated to the nonprofit world and working with veterans. About 2017, my brother was very involved, my brother and sister-in-law, with an organization called Brothers Keepers. And Brothers Keepers was started by Jack Fannin, and I talked about this last week on the podcast. Jack's a quadriplegic. He was an air combat controller, and he got injured in an accident. But anyway, they have this organization, helps quadriplegics, paraplegics, amputees, and their families. And I went to a mixer one night, and I met Terry Burgess. And Terry is the Gold Star dad of Brian Burgess, who was killed, I think, 2011, 2012, killed in action. And Terry and Elizabeth started the Gold Star Parents Retreat. We need to go back sometime and have Terry on the podcast again to kind of tell his story. He's in a very dark place, and he just he needed some help, and found out through some other organizations, that there was a lot of people just like him. So they established the Gold Star Parents Retreat 2 weeks ago. We had a great retreat. I've been blessed to have served them 8 years doing their photography. But anyway, I met Terry, and that got me involved with the Gold Star Parents Retreat. For you that don't know, I spent 34 years at Lockheed Martin. And in that big factory, a mile long, I was in an office, but in the whole building, there's no windows. So you walk in, sometimes you walk in early in the morning and it's dark. If you're working overtime, you walk out and it's dark. So I spent 34 years and not being able to see outside. So I retired. And one of the things I wanted to do was, along with my real estate business, I've been in real estate business for 41 years, and my mother was a broker. So our family's been serving Texas in the real estate for over 60 years. But anyway, I wanted to have a video vlog. That's where you just kind of talk with a video camera. So I did a lot of research and found that at that time, 2017, that the Canon 80D was a great camera for doing vlogs. So I bought that camera. It's 8 years ago this month that I retired and walked out of Lockheed, and I had that camera. Well, my niece had been, she had worked at Birchman Baptist Church, and she had told us about an organization called Roll Call, and she'd sing the national anthem for them occasionally. And it's just these veterans at that time, it was probably 50. Whenever Roll Call moved to Birchman, probably 2015 or so. It wasn't a lot of people, but Amy would sing the national anthem. And so I got released from from my incarceration out at Lockheed, and I went to roll call. Well, I had no intentions of taking pictures, but I just wanted to do video, but I took my camera. And I saw a guy taking pictures, and his name was Joe Snyder. I said, can I take pictures? So I took pictures and posted them on Facebook. People liked them. People shared them. I went back the next month, took more pictures, and I kind of got hooked. And then Terry asked me later on to go, if I could do the Gold Star Parents Retreat. I said, sure. And oh my goodness, that thunder's going. But anyway, that's how I got involved in photography. I'm not a trained photographer, and I didn't, I don't hold myself out as a photographer, because there's some great photographers out there. And anyway, there's Terry's Gold Star Parent Retreat. I'm trying to do all this stuff and tell this story. So rock along, and I go to a Veterans Day parade, and I stopped at Whataburger at Montgomery Street and I-30 on the way to the Veterans Day parade, because roll call was going to have a float in it. And I went in to eat breakfast. I saw a fella and his family, and I noticed he had this shirt on that said 22 Kill, and he had a black ring on, and I knew a little bit about 22 Kill, doing the 22 push-ups, but he came and sat down near a table that I was at, and I said, my name is Rick Irving, and I was looking at your shirt, and he said, well, my name's Dan Lombardo. He said, I'm the chairman of the board of 22 Kill. I said, how about that? So we talked, and then he was going to the parade. So I made friends with Dan that day and started doing photography work for 22 Kill, which is now One Tribe, and got introduced to their tribe with Jake and Schick and Ashley Schick, and started doing photography for them and for clay shoots. And at the clay shoot, the first clay shoot I went to, I met a lady. Her name is, man, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, Sheila. No, not Sheila. Anyway, I'll get back to that in a minute. Anyway, Shapapata. Man, I'm embarrassed. I'm going to look that up, okay? This is one of those days I've just drawn a blank completely. Anyway, Sheena, I'm sorry, but Sheena Shapapata, she'd run a clay shoot, and she introduced me to Light Up to Live. Randall Reed and his family, they have Randall Reed car dealerships in Dallas and Houston, and they have an organization called Light Up to Live. I started doing some photography for them, and then Sheena had another organization, the Sons of the Flag. They take care of burn victims. It was founded by Ryan Parrott, a Navy SEAL, and they do magnificent work for burn victims. And from there, I hope that the thunder is not drowning this out. I'm going to have to go back and do some editing and play this again because of all the thunder. But Sons of the Flag, and then the Garland Police Department, Never Walk Alone Foundation. So just through Sheena, I've met all these other nonprofits and have worked with them. So, that whole journey has been a great journey. And we've got a lot more people. This is General Robin Aiken, and Robin is very involved with the Daughters of the American Revolution, with the Elizabeth Crockett chapter down in Granbury. She does a lot of stuff for women veterans. She speaks around the country. She goes around the world, and she's a great woman. And her and her husband, they're great people and good friends. So good morning, Robin. And then here's Doug Peterson. He lives not far from me, so he knows about the Rolling Thunder. And there's an organization called Carry the Load, And they have every Memorial Day, they have this huge event over in Dallas. It starts on the East Coast and West Coast and lasts about a month as they go down and have these walks all the way down to Dallas. But I was at Carry the Load, and I saw this guy, and he had a hat that said Dust Off, and maybe a shirt that time that said Dust Off. Well, Dust Off is the medevac, air ambulance, rescue helicopters, and I could tell he was probably a dust-off guy. So I started talking to Doug and introduced myself because I flew with the 4th Platoon 507th Air Ambulance at Fort Sill. And we had a lot of Vietnam pilots and crew members that had been to Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, so I didn't go in country whenever I served in the Army. But I met Doug at Carry the Load over in Dallas. And I started telling him about roll call because I found out he lives probably about 4 miles from me in Benbrook. So, it's just, you just meet people. Like I met Dan Lombardo, and then I met Doug at these other events. So anyway, Doug's a great guy. If you need a speaker, he's an excellent speaker. He's got a video he made about his experiences, one of those TED Talks. So just look him up, Doug Peterson. He does a lot of volunteer work too. So Doug, good to see you on here this morning. And then here's John Salerno. He's with the 99% radio show. He's a great guy. Terry Burgess, you catch precious moments in time, not just photos. And here's another friend of mine, a good jarhead, Andrew Mendoza. He says hello and good morning. He's got a jewelry store. If you need work done, he's got a jewelry store, or if you need some jewelry, over in Hearst. Just a great guy and a good friend of mine. And I'll tell you how I met him in just a little bit. It's all about meeting people. But anyway, Carry the Load, went there and met Doug Peterson. So from there, I had a friend that worked at Lockheed, and he'd been telling me about this event called Skyball. And Lockheed would have volunteers go help set things up, tear things down. Skyball would have a barbecue on Saturday or Friday night, and then they have the actual Skyball, a big formal event on Saturday. And I never had gone to it, but I certainly heard a lot about it. Well, one of our Heroes on the Water members and the president of our chapter, they were at Skyball, well, at the barbecue. She and her family were going to get recognized, and they were going to, I think it's from the American Airlines Credit Union, they were going to get a trip to Disney in like $10,000 deal. And so my other friend, Red Brown, he said, can you come and take pictures? Because I had this camera. I said, sure, I'll do it. I walked in to the barbecue at the Skyball, and I said, oh my gosh, this is something. I hadn't even been to the ball part, but I had been going to roll call, and I knew an old guy, Fisk Scanley. He's a World War II B-29 navigator, got shot down over Japan, held as a special prisoner, a war criminal, in a dungeon in Tokyo. So I saw Fisk, and I started talking to him, and he's in a wheelchair, and he was going over to the VIP part. Well, he walked in there, and there was a lady. I wish I knew who she was, because I said, "Oh, I'm with him, and I'm taking pictures for this." So, well, you don't have a VIP pass. Well, just a second, I'm gonna walk over there, and you just walk on in. So I did, and so I went in the VIP room, and here were all these Medal of Honor recipients. My goodness. And then Fisk could sit down, and all these Medal of Honor recipients were going to see Fisk instead of Fisk going to see them. But anyway, Fisk was sitting at the table with me. We were having a meal, and they played the national anthem. And Fisk stood up and he saluted. And it's one of the, out of every 5,000 or 6,000 pictures, I'll take one of them that I think that is a good picture. And that picture is my favorite picture of Fisk Hanley. I used to take Fisk around a lot of places and probably have about 1,500 pictures of Fisk. But anyway, that was my exposure to the Airpower Foundation and Skyball. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to find out how to get involved with that. Well, they had an event called War Stories one night, and I got on their mailing list, and I went to it. And I took my camera and took some pictures and put them on the internet. And I got an email from Tal Milan, and he was the chairman of the Fort Worth Airpower Council at the time. And he said, we'd like for you to be a member. I thought, I don't know about that. I'm just a enlisted guy in the Army, and I kind of looked at I looked at the people that were members, and, had congressmen and generals and admirals and all kinds of colonels and commanders. And I'm thinking, it's kind of out of my league. I don't know. Maybe they've lowered the bar or something, but I rocked along there. And about a month later, he said, hey, aren't you going to fill out that application? We'd like to have you as a member. So I did. I didn't know anybody. And so they were having a trip to Fort Hood. I thought, well, if I'm going to meet some people, I better go on this trip. And I went on that trip, and my goodness, just being with those people and going to an Army base, and I hadn't been an Army base since I got out of the Army, and that kind of baptized me into the world of Fort Worth Airpower Council and Airpower Foundation. And I started taking pictures for the council and the foundation, and that just gave me more opportunities to meet more great people. And it's just one of those deals. Mary and I love to network, and we love to bring different organizations together. And so that's kind of what we try to do, is to help other organizations, because it's not all about just one organization, because all these organizations that help the veterans and military, we all have the same end user. And so our end users, the veterans. So we all have the same end users, and a lot of times the mission is the same. I mean, you might be working with post-traumatic stress, or people with mobility issues, or family issues. With the Fourth Airpower Council at NASJRB, one thing that we really strive to do is not just help the military member, but help the families. And so, whenever there's a deployment, we help with the send-off, and then we help with the families out there whenever their loved ones are deployed. They have a food bank at the NASJRB and through the Fort Worth Airpower Council and Roll Call and the Airpower Foundation and other organizations. We, Holidays and Heroes, we help keep that food bank going, because, a lot of the lower enlisted people, some of them don't have great incomes. And so we kind of help fill that gap that they have and be sure that they're taken care of. So, it's just these great organizations that help our veterans, our first responders, and our military. And through the Fort Worth Airpower Council and Airpower Foundation, I became friends with Major General Kevin Pottinger and his wife, Ann. And they established an organization called Freedom Mobility, where they provide mobility devices, cars that are outfitted with mobility assistance, like hand controls or lifts, or ATVs that are rigged up so people that are mobilely impaired, maybe it's amputee or paraplegic, they can get out and go out and do things in ATV. But I was asked to serve on the board, and it's been a very great experience to serve on that board. with Kevin and Ann and their team that they have assembled to help people. But it's all through all these other organizations. And, I guess that it's a blessing to have rain, but I wish we could have scheduled a rainstorm around the podcast. But another place that I went with Mark Donahue and Don Graves was to the 2019 Iwo Jima reunion up in Wichita Falls. And there I got to spend a lot of time, several days, with Woody Williams, the Medal of Honor recipient, United States Marine Corps. And there were a lot of Iwo Jima veterans that I got to meet that day. But the lifeblood, I'm gonna let this thunder kind of roll through, but the lifeblood of every nonprofit organization are its volunteers. They're the ones that make the organization. They're the ones that are behind the scenes doing the work and doing things. And I met a gentleman, Troy Milton. Troy's an Army veteran that is from Wichita Falls. And Troy is just a great guy. He runs golf tournaments for different organizations up there. He's doing stuff all the time. And this is just another networking story, but with the Gold Star Parents Retreat in Terry Burgess, we'd been having the Gold Star Parents Retreat at a ranch near Gainesville. And we moved to the Jellystone campground in Wichita Falls. And we didn't have many contacts up there. We're getting set up and everything. I said, I know a guy. His name is Troy Milton. And I got he and Terry hooked up, and Troy's been a fantastic supporter of the Gold Star Parents Retreat, provides our food, gets donations from different stores, and has a great meal cooked. But Troy, you're a great American, and I'm proud and honored to be called your friend. But that's just another little facet in getting this person hooked up with this person. And through the Airpower Foundation and Freedom Mobility, we have a chance every year to come together for the Armed Forces Bowl and do presentations. The Armed Forces Bowl is in December, right toward the end of the year. And Freedom Mobility, we will give a vehicle or an ATV or even a golf cart, a solo rider golf cart, to a veteran or first responder at the Armed Forces Bowl. Well, let me just clarify that. A first responder that is a veteran. So we had several of those fellows that fit the bill on that, 2 police officers from Fort Worth, and we were able to give some ATVs. And then the Airpower Foundation, they provide the suite for the Purple Heart recipients. The Military Order of the Purple Heart, Department of Texas, I think, is the official title of that. And I've gotten to do work for their organization several times. We're going to be at the ball game next week where they recognize the Purple Heart recipients. But anyway, the Armed Forces Bowl is another great place. And the Airpower Foundation, often they'll present a vehicle or something else to a recipient, a veteran. So that's there's just great opportunities for everybody. There's no sense in somebody saying, I'd like to do something for veterans. Well, come and get involved. If you need a place, you can see me, you can see Mary, Wanda Cox, with the Airpower Foundation. There's just a tremendous opportunity to help. Well, one of the organizations that called me one time was Carrie Ortegal. And she said, Rick, you're a photographer, and I'd like to see if you could help us out at Holidays and Heroes. And I thought, well, I bet I can. And so I said, tell me more about it. Well, Holidays and Heroes, they take care of our military families at NASJRB Fort Worth with Christmas. And what they do, they have donors and families that get names, and the military members fill out kind of a wish list for their families, their children's ages, their clothes sizes, shoe sizes, what their children want. And each one of these families, they get a lot of gifts every year, probably minimum $700,000 of gifts for the family members. You know, the mother and father, they may get something, but the children. And on Saturday night, it's always the first week of December. On Saturday night, we have the gathering of the gifts at Carrie and Bob's house. And all these people bring the gifts, load them up in riders' trucks to take them to the base and set them up for the Christmas giving the next day. But they have a great party. We have people from the base. And, you know, it was, I think 2 years ago, well, you know, there's probably 50, 60 people in there. Well, this Suburban rolls up, and Chris Gaffney with the Medal of Honor Museum steps out, and he has 4 Medal of Honor recipients that come to our little party. I mean, where else but Fort Worth, Texas, can you go to a Christmas party and have 4 Medal of Honor recipients? But whenever I first went to the giving of the gifts, we do it in a hangar, have all these tables set up for the families, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gifts, and all kinds of volunteers. Again, volunteers are the lifeblood of the organization, as well as the donors and sponsors. But here's all these people that come together. And when I first went to the first one, I said, this is one of those events I never want to miss. It's just magnificent. And so that's Holidays and Heroes. Well, about 2 years ago, Carrie had some funds left over and wanted to help provide meals, Thanksgiving meals, for the families at the base. Well, we had to do a little, some kind of rearranging of the way we did it, but she was able to, along with the Airpower Foundation and the Fort Worth Airpower Council and some other organizations, Roll Call, had volunteers there, but we were able to go through the Tarrant Area Food Bank and donate the money for the food bank to donate the meals. So, you know, we give about 100 pounds of food, and the cars pull through. You know, the people get in the line, and they pull through, and we have volunteers load the food up 100 pounds, including turkey and all the vegetables and everything for Thanksgiving, about a week's worth of food. And so that's another way that these organizations go out there and help people get food like that, you know. So we're able to bless them not only at Christmas but at Thanksgiving. And let's see what else I wanted to tell you about. You know, I've got involved with the Police Officers Association, Fort Worth POA, and they have some nonprofits that do events. They have a golf tournament, some other things, and I get to help out with that. But Lou Duckwall, he's another guy that I love. He's a Marine gunny sergeant. He started Patriot Anglers, and we got involved through Freedom Mobility to take some sled hockey players that were amputees and paraplegics that play sled hockey up in Colorado Springs and Denver area. We were able to bring them to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, to go fly fishing with Patriot Anglers. Now, old gunny Sergeant Lou, he's just a magnificent guy, just laid back. And I love to watch Lou because he reminded me a lot of Jim Dolan that started Heroes on the Water. Just kind of quiet guys that I'd watch them stand there as people were enjoying and healing, because both of them kind of aim their organizations, the healing power of water, for those veterans and first responders that have post-traumatic stress. But to see Lou and have him watch those guys and see Jim Dolan, it's just, I just admire both of them so much, because here's two guys that just had, I mean, they had a thought, an idea, and wanted to help others, because especially Lou, he'd been uh, pretty severely injured in the war, and he needed the help too. And so he found it through fly fishing. And Jim was an American airline pilot, I think, and he found the healing process of kayak fishing. But those are just some of the great people that I have been involved with, and it's been a great journey for an old Army veteran with a ponytail and a camera. But let's just look at some of the comments. Cameron McNutt said, "Big news coming about Skyball soon. We will celebrate the 250th birthday of our Army, Navy, and Marine Corps in a big way at Globe Life Field." So that's going to be one of those hot tickets in town if you can get there, because the Skyball it's just all about honoring our military and our veterans and the families of those, and it's coming up. And let's see, I've got there right there, Airpower Foundation.org. Go there and you can find out more about the things that they're going to do. And whenever I come to the events, we'll be talking more about that. Here's Freedom Mobility Foundation. That's their website, freedommobilityfoundation.org. Find out more about how we help our veterans and first responders that are mobilely impaired, and Patriot Anglers. If you want to go fly fishing, learn to fly fish, I mean, it's like 101. They have one guide with one fisherman. So if you want to learn to fly fish and you're a veteran, just go to patriotanglers.org and find out more about that. I'm going to tell you one more story. And Ernie LaCroix, he was a pilot in Europe in World War II. He was having his 100th birthday. And on his 100th birthday, and by the way, he was born February 22nd, 1919. And in 2019, on his 100th birthday, he walked the Cowtown 5K. They had this, I mean, it was all about Ernie that day. Mayor Price at the time, she was there. She did a proclamation at the starting line, and he had T-shirts made. And as they were assembling before the race, these two fellows came up, and they were both in attire to do a 5K, and they introduced themselves. Ernie's unit, I forgot what it was, but over the years, it had gone from this bombing group all the way to some kind of Space Force group or something. This was the commander and his XO of the unit that had the same unit number as Ernie's unit, and they came to walk with him. And so as part of all that process, I was just I hadn't been doing photography that long, didn't know much about media passes, but the 5K people said, "Here, you need a media pass." So I said, "Okay, I guess I do." So that way you can go with Ernie back in the back and all this stuff. So I got this media pass. And a couple of weeks later, the Golden Gloves was they were having their tournament, the regional tournament. I thought, I wonder if they give a media pass, because I love boxing. And Larry and I had been talking about boxing for years, and Larry O'Neill with Fort Worth Memories. And I'd grown up from the time I was about 5 years old. I'd go with my best friend and his dad, the Golden Gloves, every year when it was at Will Rogers Coliseum, standing room only, thousands of people. That was the big event of the year for Fort Worth back in the 50s and 60s. But anyway, I think to myself, I'm going to see if I can get my camera in there. Well, I go up to the window and I said, I want to see about getting a media pass. Well, they call this girl up, and she comes up. I said, I'm Rick Irving. I'm a photojournalist, and I'd like to see if I can get a media pass. She said, come with me. I didn't even have to buy a ticket. So I go down to ringside, and there is the president. Monica is down there. She's the president of the Texas Golden Gloves. I said, I'd like to take pictures. And she said, oh, we'd love for you to take pictures, because whenever I was a little boy, all around the ring were photographers for the newspapers and things, but I look around, there's no photographers. They set me right at ringside. I mean, my table's here and the ring's right here. And as a little boy, I used to look through my binoculars and see all the rich guys down on the ringside with their big cigars and fancy suits. And I'd always wanted to get ringside, and I'd gotten ringside several times over the years, but this was better than ringside. And so I took pictures of, and they gave me this pass for the state and for the regional and the state tournament. I took pictures at both tournaments and posted them. And, I got the nicest text message from this mother, from a young boxer from San Antonio. She said, "Mr. Irving, I'd like to thank you for taking pictures because I couldn't afford to see my son fight in the state tournament. But through your pictures, I got to see him fight." And, whenever that happened, it just kind of, it told me, "Hey, Rick, you need to start doing this all the time to give these young people those pictures that they can cherish forever. Because when they're 65, 70 years old, they'll have some pictures of that day that they walked in the ring by themselves to box." And it's a long haul every year. I take about 15,000 pictures over the course of 9 days, but those kids are going to have pictures, and those pictures are going to become memories. And the reason I talk about how important pictures are, I'm going to end with a story. So I've been kind of long-winded today, but in 1963, November the 22nd, and most of you have heard my stories that are friends of mine that follow me on social media, but John Fitzgerald Kennedy and his wife Jacqueline were in town, were in Fort Worth. They spent the night at the Hotel Texas. That was a Friday morning, and our mama woke us up early, and she said, "You aren't going to school today. We're going to see if we can see the president." Hey, that's pretty cool for a 10-year-old kid. So she took us out to Carswell Air Force Base, that's now NASJRB. And there was a rope line there. Air Force One was just, 50 feet in front of us. And we got there early because my daddy was a United States Marine. And if you weren't an hour early at something, you were late. But anyway, we got there early. We stood at the rope line, and then a big crowd gathered behind us. And we could see people scurrying around Air Force One, and then we could hear sirens in the distance. And the sirens got closer and closer. Well, all of a sudden, here comes the motorcade. The motorcycle cops pull up, and the President of the United States of America and his wife were in a limousine, a convertible, and they got out. And they pulled up short of Air Force One. And to our surprise, John Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy started shaking hands with people. And they got closer and closer to us. And Mama just kind of pressed us up because the crowd was pressing against us. She said, "Stick out your hand, stick out your hand." And so we did. And we got to shake hands with John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And then we got to shake hands with Jackie. And my little brother was there. He was 6 years old at the time. We got to see him walk to Air Force One and wave to us. We were so excited. But then just within about 2 hours, our whole world crashed because the President of the United States had been assassinated. And we were just, for a 10-year-old kid to have emotion from one end of the spectrum to the other. Well, life rocked along, and we could share that story. And it was in 2013, a film producer called my brother, and he was working on a documentary about JFK, the final day or the final hours. And he asked about our story, and then he called me. And so we shared our story. And he said, "Do you have any pictures or anything?" I said, No, we don't know. We never have seen a picture. And he sent us a film clip that the news people had taken. He said, "See if you can maybe see where you might be." And we did. And he captured a picture of us. And there we are with the President of the United States and Jackie. You can just see my face and the top of my little brother's head, Ken. But, now we had not only that memory, if we never had that picture, we could tell that story and it'd get passed from one generation, maybe two generations. But because we had that picture, that story can go for many, many generations. So pictures are important. And maybe that's why I do what I do. But that's just part of the story I wanted to share with you about how this old Army veteran got into all the photography and has been able to use that photography and use that I just, people say, oh, you're a great photographer. I'm not. I'm just a lucky guy with a camera. But, it's given me the opportunity to make those memories and be the visual storyteller for these different nonprofits so they can use those pictures for, their fundraising. And then they can get to the pictures. Because one thing I always like to do is be sure I take pictures of of as many volunteers as I can and of all the sponsors and the signage for the sponsors, because the sponsors are the ones that grease the gears that make it roll, and then the volunteers are the ones that do all the work behind the scenes to make these successful events. Let's see. Doug Peterson says 100 vets who give a damn's another. Yeah, I've even got a name tag over there. I haven't been to one of their events, but Doug, you're right about that. 100 veterans that give a damn. They just had their event last week. They have 3 nonprofits. Each nonprofit gets about 5 minutes to tell about their organization, and then the audience that's there, they give about $100 a piece or more to the different organizations. That's a great organization. And then Doug Peterson, he's a volunteer like many others for Holidays and Heroes, and like Doug does. I love Holidays and Heroes also. And Terry Burgess said, "You got me in a kayak. You got me in a kayak to go fishing with you and Winky." Oh yeah, I forgot about Winky. Winky Hicks, retired lieutenant with the Fort Worth Police Department, and he was the Tunnel for Towers guy. And this, I promise, this one more story about Terry and Winky. I was looking at Facebook, and Terry was going to New York for Tunnel for Towers with his grandchildren. And Tunnels for Towers having some kind of foot race, 5K or something. That's kind of what they do here. I think October, we have a 5K. And Winky was instrumental in getting Tunnel to Towers and setting up that 5K. But I saw that Terry was there. I saw that Winky was there. I said, I need to get these guys together. So I got a picture of Terry and sent it to Winky. And I got a picture of Winky and sent it to Terry. I said, hey, y'all see if you can find each other. They did. And our Tunnel to Towers 5K was just a month or two away. And lo and behold, Winky's up there and he introduced Terry. And Terry told a story about how that Tunnels for Towers, excuse me, 1 minute, Tunnels for Towers had gifted his son Brian's widow and children a house in San Diego, and how that blessed them. So, yeah, I forgot about Tunnels Towers. We're going to have a great, another great 5K. Thank you for all you do for so many. You're a rock star. Thank you. You are too, Doug. It's people like you that volunteer for these, and I just love you, brother. Cameron McNick, thank you for everything you do. You're amazing. I don't do this for accolades, and I've gotten in the habit whenever I'm at galas and places to eat, I don't like to. I usually go, if it's at a hotel and the people are preparing the food back in the kitchen or the caterers are preparing stuff, I'll go back there and get a plate to eat, because whenever people are eating at a function, it's not a time to take pictures, because all you're going to do, if you take a picture of people at the table, everybody's going to have their mouth with food in it and stuff like that. So I take a break then. But that's a little bit about the journey of of Rick Irving and how I got there. Here's Mark Vaughn. Good morning, Rick. Thanks for the work you do in supporting so many charities. Mark's on the board of directors with me with the Fort Worth Air Power Council, and he does a great job there. His father, Jackie, is a retired Air Force pilot, C-130 pilot, and that family is one that gives back to people. Roll call, sponsor a vet. This is a kind of initiative I got going on to help buy lunch for a vet. You know, you go start feeding 500 people, it'll get in your checkbook pretty quick. So as a veteran, you know, I enjoy going and getting a free meal at roll call, but it does cost money. And to show your support and gratitude for our veterans, here's a way that you can donate $20 a month to go toward buying a meal and the outreach programs that the roll call has. Again, war stories. Please try to get your ticket if you haven't already got it. This is going to be a good event, except, you know, we're going to get Dr. Kerry Krager, I think that's his name, from Texas A&M. I'm just digging a bit deeper hole, from Texas Tech. Sorry about that, Red Raiders. But he's got a PhD, and Texas Tech has the most archives about the Vietnam War and the most history. The only place I think he said that the National Archives has a little bit more, but he's the oral historian that goes out and does the veterans, has them tell their story, and he does this for the Texas Tech veterans deal. But anyway, we're going to get him to moderate whenever we have the veterans up there, but he had a family vacation already planned, and so yours truly is going to be doing that. And I'm not a PhD from Texas Tech or anything like that, but one good thing about it is the 4 veterans that we have all been on the podcast, so I know their stories. What I have to do is kind of help them kind of stay in the guardrails and not go over on time too much. So, because all 4 of them, you know, I mean, was just like Bill Pugh. He was on one podcast, and he had so many stories. We did another one, and he had so many more stories. We did 3 podcasts with him. Bill Henry's been on twice. Bruce Stacy's been on twice, and I need to get John Ewell on again, because whenever we did it, our hour came up, and he was still in the prisoner of war camp, and usually we tried to keep it at an hour. And so I said, I couldn't leave him in the prisoner of war camp, so we went about 30 more minutes, but he's got some great stories to tell too. The 96 Fort Worth Memorial Day service is at Mount Olivet on Monday, and that's Memorial Day. Carry the Load's going to be going on in Dallas on Memorial Day, but my co-host, Mary Staffel, is going to be the keynote speaker. And you see the other people up there, some of my other friends, Tim O'Hare and Captain Hustetler. And we've got city council people, and Jungus Jordan, former city council member, and a retired lieutenant colonel is going to be there, along with Carlos and Charles and Janelle. So anyway, that's going to be a great event. I'm anxious to hear what Mary has to say. The Airpower Foundation is going to have a walk 22 miles in the month of June to fight the veteran suicide and bring awareness to post-traumatic stress, and walk anywhere you are and make a difference. And I know that they're enlisting some other organizations to help this 22-mile, walking 22 miles. You ought to do it in one day, and then you wouldn't have to walk a lot. Just go do it one day and get it over with. But anyway, through the month of May, or through the month of June, they're going to have this walk to remind everybody about the 22 veterans that take their life every day. The Women's Veterans Luncheon is going to be Tuesday, June the 3rd. This is over by the TCC South Campus, and it's going to be a good event. I'm going to try to sneak in and take pictures. And then save the date for the Fort Worth Stockyards Patriot Roundup. This is the second annual. It was a great event last year. And I know it's going to be an even greater event because the Airpower Foundation, they don't do no shabby events. We had a event a few weeks ago at the new Medal of Honor Museum, the National Medal of Honor Museum over in Arlington. And we had several Medal of Honor recipients that talked and told their stories and found out more about the history of the Medal of Honor Museum and how it got to Arlington, Texas. And it was a lot of work with the city of Arlington and the former chairman of the board of the Airpower Foundation, Sid Epps, and Medal of Honor recipient Doc Ballard. We need to have Doc and Sid on this one day on Hometown Heroes and maybe the mayor of Arlington at the time and tell about that story, because Arlington wasn't on the radar and they kind of shut things down because I think Doc Ballard might have been on the board of directors or something and say, hey, no, whoa, we know you got these other cities in the running. Let's do Arlington. So magnificent story. And it was a magnificent time that we had at the National Honor Museum. And our good friend BJ Pryor and Linda Lou invited me the other day to the 50th anniversary of Vietnam commemorative at the Medal of Honor Museum. And it was just a wonderful event. And thank you all for inviting me. And it was one of those rare invitations that they didn't say, would you like to come and take pictures? The only camera I had was on my phone. So I got to enjoy a day. And a few weeks ago, the Fort Worth, the Airpower Foundation invited me to an event and said, you don't need to bring your camera, just come and enjoy the event. So I enjoy those kind of events. Thank you all for letting me attend those events and not have to work. Anyway, just go to our podcast YouTube channel and let me see if I can get that up here, because we're really trying to build that channel up so we can get more people to see our YouTube videos. You can go to youtube.com/at the Voice of Heroes streams, or just the Voice of Heroes. So just do that. And we are very honored that you joined us today. And Mary, if you're listening in, our thoughts and prayers are with you as you go through this time of grieving over your relative. And thank everybody for being a part of this. And the other day, I got to tape Don Graves on his 100th birthday singing God Bless America. And as we leave, I want to share that with you. I'll see you next week on Hometown Heroes. Iwo Jima survivor Don Graves singing God Bless America on his 100th birthday.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above, from the mountain to the prairie, to the ocean, why we're born. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, our home sweet home. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being a part of Hometown Heroes podcast. Visit our YouTube channel and subscribe today. We look forward to seeing you next week on Hometown Heroes, the voice of heroes, the voice for heroes.